There are tons of excellent D&D adventures, modules, and classes available for free. Today, I'm sharing 5 of my favorites, including a detailed but easy to implement crafting system, a sci-fi system for 5e, and a repository where you can get Wizards of the Coast content for free and it's not stolen. I'm also going to go through some of the huge trove of free content available from the sponsor of today's video, Describe. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video. Welcome to the table. I'm Kelly, and I didn't have to pay for my Willy. It was already freed. Some of these things are fully free, and some of them are pay what you want with a 0 option available. But all these creators have ways that you can support them, so if you end up using these, please do support them so they can make even more awesome stuff. Crafting in 5e is pretty much non-existent. Even in the 2024 DM's guide, which has tons of magic items, the rules for crafting basically amount to time and gold. But luckily, Kibbles Tasty, great name by the way, has you covered. They released a free 100-page version of their crafting system that you can easily implement into your game. I really like the design of this system because it's very detailed, but it can be implemented without derailing your campaign, and it offloads almost all of the work to the players. The actual rules for the system are about 10 pages, and the other 90 are recipes for crafting items and potions. The system revolves around collecting special ingredients and then making crafting checks to progress on the item or potion. Failing checks wastes ingredients, meaning you might need to go out and get more.
I think we're going to need another feather over here, Professor.
The ingredients all have generic names like reactive agent instead of dragon liver, meaning that you can make any monster drop the required ingredients. So if your player decides they want to craft a magic arrow, they don't need to abandon the current quest to go in search of a rock feather. They can find what they need on whatever kind of monster fits your world and story. The other reason that it's low lift for the DM is that the 90-page recipe catalog empowers your players to seek out ingredients. You can just hand that over to your players to look through and get inspired. And then once they pick something they want to make, you can just start dropping those ingredients in your world.
What the hell is that?
Salad.
I'm really excited to implement this in my next campaign, and I've linked the Reddit post down below if you want to check it out. Before we look at a repository of all the free official playtest material, let's look at a completely free and extremely in-depth sci-fi system for 5e. Star Wars 5e is a complete Star Wars themed sci-fi rule set for 5th edition. It includes new classes and races like the droid class or engineer class, new monsters, weapons mechanics, ship mechanics, and even force mechanics if you want Jedi in your game. The whole system is available for free through a well-organized website, which I've linked down below. Fun fact, Dimension 20 used a slightly adapted version of this rule set for their Starstruck Odyssey sci-fi campaign. I'd really like to run a campaign set on some Outer Rim planet, away from any Jedi or Skywalker stuff. The fun thing about the Star Wars universe is that the canon is so wild and all over the place that you can really just make up whatever you want. Put it on an Outer Rim planet, and then just make reference to the Star Wars universe to make the world feel connected. I'd also like to run a city campaign in the seedy underbelly of Coruscant.
You wanna buy some death sticks?
Although for that, the Cyberpunk Red TTRPG might be better. And of course, there's also the Star Wars RPG, which is a cool dice pool system. But if you want to stick with D&D and you want it for free, then check out Star Wars 5e.
I'm a poet and didn't even know I was rhyming those words.
Before we get to the index of free official playtest material, including ship combat rules, mass combat rules, and a bunch of monsters and classes, as well as one of the most delightful little system-agnostic resources I've come across, I want to show you some of the massive repository of free content available from the sponsor of today's video, Describe. Describe has over 15,000 descriptions, and thousands of them are available for free. Describe offers description text for locations, spells, creatures, dialogue, and pretty much anything else that could happen in your game. There are descriptions for fantasy, modern, and sci-fi games. Some of them even have art. You can read these descriptions verbatim, like this badass dialogue line.
You think yourself fearsome, wreathed in your armor, surrounded by your followers, but I've looked into the abyss and bent it to my will. Today, you die.
Starting with something like that could inspire a character's voice and way of speaking. And having a couple of pre-written lines of dialogue can be great to stick to the back of your DM screen as a reminder to actually have your baddies speak during combat. If you use the code PowerWordSpill at checkout, you can get an extended 30-day free trial so you can check out everything Describe has to offer, including art, interactive maps with description text built in, and of course, the entire music and sound effects platform, Opus. Describe partnered with Michael Gelfi Studios to build Opus. It's a tool you can use to combine your descriptions with ambience tracks, sound effects, and music, and stream it all to your players. Head to the link down in the description to check out all the free content and try out the full suite of features. When Wizards of the Coast is creating new material, they often release playtest packs that they call Unearthed Arcana. These aren't official rules, but often they're pretty close to complete. There are Unearthed Arcana documents for classes, adventures, mass combat, ship combat, and a bunch of other stuff. After the playtest period is over, Wizards usually removes the links from their website, but they don't actually remove the files from their server. So if you were around during the playtest and saved the link somewhere, you can still access the files from their server. Luckily for us, the r/D&D Next subreddit has a resource list that, among other things, contains a list of links to every Unearthed Arcana document still hosted on the official Wizards of the Coast website. A couple of the links are broken, but it's still a pretty exhaustive list. Again, these are playtest materials, so it's kind of like using homebrew in your game, but it's homebrew made by the Wizards of the Coast team, so it's pretty safe. You should definitely look through the mechanics with a keen eye though before implementing anything. There are lots of cool mechanics in the list, but some of my favorites are the mass combat rules, which contains rules for creating units of infantry and then running a large-scale battle. For what my group is interested in, they're a little too involved, but I think they could be a great reference if you were making your own homebrew mass combat rules. There's also a whole Unearthed Arcana document on traps. It includes mechanics and roll tables for building simple and complex traps, and scaling the lethality of the traps so you don't accidentally torch your whole level 1 party if they barge through a suspicious door without investigating it first.
Dead kid.
And the last one I'll mention is the ship mechanics from Ghosts of the Saltmarsh called Of Ships and the Sea. It has all kinds of mechanics for owning a ship, crew expenses, ship combat, as well as some sample stat blocks for a few different types of ships. My players always seem to end up with a ship of some variety in our campaigns, so I find these rules to be a great jumping off point. Like I mentioned, these are hosted on the Wizards of the Coast server, so who knows how long they'll be available for. If any of them catch your eye, I'd save the PDF just in case. I really appreciate that Wizards keeps these files available. I think they're a great resource and a great advertisement for the modules, because if you like the UA, then you'll probably like the more refined module. So all that to say, WotC, please don't take this away from us.
Please! You're part of my life. You are everything.
By the way, if you like hearing about these sorts of recommendations, then you'll probably like the podcast we just launched. Loren, Alec, and I launched a podcast called We Like D&D, where we talk about D&D and TTRPGs in variety show style segments. One of which is Show and Tell, where we each bring in something TTRPG related, whether it's a whole TTRPG system, a 5e module, a setting guide, or anything else that's caught our eye, and we share them with each other.
There's also a one-page adventure in there, Escape from Gourmet Street. Help a pair or trio of star-crossed lovers escape from Gourmet Street in a Snakes and Ladders inspired chase.
I love that optionally it's a trio of star-crossed lovers for the triad in your campaign.
Yeah.
We also do a pop culture character build, answer some questions, and play a silly little role-playing game we made up. There are 3 episodes out now, and there will be a new episode on the first Monday of every month. If you want to check it out, it's linked down below. Up next is one of the most delightful little modules that I've come across. It's called Gourmet Street by John Gregory and Charles Ferguson Avery. On the surface, Gourmet Street is a series of roll tables for adding food and street vendors to your worlds. It's such an easy way to add something fun for your players to interact with by describing what's on the menu next time they visit a tavern or a market. You could just use that part of it, and it would add fun flavor and detail to your worlds. But there's so much more in it as well. There's a whole miniature setting that can magically appear anywhere called Gourmet Street. In this mini setting guide, there are food-based factions, food-based monsters, roll tables with mechanical effects for eating certain foods, and even a short little adventure. There are quirky illustrations in a very endearing old school style throughout, and the whole thing is just extremely fun. I really love adding this type of stuff to my worlds because it can shake up the serious tone and allow your players to emotionally rest between tense world-ending events.
Don't let the cave-in get you down, sucker!
I also love the patchwork of styles and genres that make up a TTRPG world. You can have high fantasy, snooty elves living next to a modern themed fantasy city that looks like suburban America. You can do whatever you want. And I find these types of modules are great reminders for myself to shake up the genre every once in a while. Gourmet Street is available as pay what you want, and I've linked it down in the description. The last one I have to share with you today is purely mechanically utilitarian, the opposite of the flavor-filled previous one, but just as valuable. Humanoid Swarms by Brendan Heinlein on DM's Guild offers exactly what it says on the tin: stat blocks for swarms of various low-level humanoid monsters. This is also offered as pay what you want. As you get into higher levels, it can be a huge pain to have low-level monsters like guards even be present. But inevitably, your party's gonna do something to piss someone off, and that someone is probably gonna have a contingent of guards. Rather than slogging through 10 to 20 guards in initiative, or trying to figure out the mob rules presented in the DMG, you can use these stat blocks instead. There are stat blocks for swarms of guards, kobolds, orcs, commoners, bandits, berserkers, and even some lizard folk for good measure. It's one of those modules that's just good to keep on hand because you'll probably be needing something similar at least once every campaign. I think they'd also pair quite well with the new high CR guards from the new monster manual, if you ended up picking that up. Between this and the free rules that are available, you can easily run a full campaign using only free materials. If you're looking for some free tools to go along with your free modules, then check out this video here from way back at the beginning of the channel. But guess what? I still use all of them today. I appreciate you.